This is probably going to be the most dedicated podcast I've ever done because it was almost 2 hours after I wanted to do it. And it's our fifth time trying to do this, connecting. And of course, it's what's going on during pandemic. You find a way to get things done. Welcome to another edition of Living the Dream. I'm Beto Duran. I'm trying to figure out where to put the camera. That way you don't see all the garage. Today's guest is Omar Ruiz, who's heard 5 different awesome intros, and I'm just going to get rid of them. I'm going to go straight to him. We've had some technical issues for the last 2 hours. There he is, Omar D. Ruiz from the NFL Network. Omar, how are you feeling? Hopefully we don't get kicked off again, and if we don't, damn it, we're just going to drink the beers later on, man. How are you doing?
So the reason why I keep, hanging on and going on, because every time you're pumping me up with these great 5-minute introductions, I'm looking for an ego boost for me, Beto.
Oh, man, yeah, it's Okay, so let me give you guys behind the scenes here. So I have a program that I use that I taught myself during the pandemic how to, make sure we do the video stuff, because I hate when people do podcasts just via Zoom because you only see one version. So right now we have Omar and myself. It's called a 2-shot, right? If you want Omar by himself, boom, I just click it, boom. Boom. Me by myself, boom. If we wanted to have 3 people on there, like you see from the other podcast that I do, boom. You can have Coach Diaz, you have graphics, all that other stuff you see it on the YouTube. We could do this. I taught myself how to do it, so it looks good, right? It looks good. I even got a little backdrop on here. I used to have a bunch of t-shirts. It's in the garage. Omar's at home, right? And it's what you do. You improvise. But today's the first time where I had to run an update on the program. And we would start, I would do an intro, and then about 2 minutes later, end. And then we'd come back and do it again. 5 minutes later, end. And I'm doing all these awesome intros on Omar, who I don't even know, by the way. And they were good. And see, I don't write them down. Everything's off the cuff. It's ready to go. And it was good. And every single one got better and better and better. He's an Emmy Award winner by the time we get done, right? He owns the NFL Network. And now I'm so paranoid that this is going to end. I'm just like, forget it. Omar Ruiz, NFL Network. Nice to meet you guys. How you doing? But Omar, let me give you your proper intro. And I will do this. We do have beer for you. I'm going to drop it off to you. Our good friends at Craft Beer Kings are going to hook you up with some beer. I'm going to go drop it off. There it is. I don't even know if you're a beer drinker, but we're going to get it for you. Mo, Mike Salam, Craft Beer Kings. Go to the app. They'll hook you up. They deliver beer. 2 dudes that just started off running a liquor store, their dad's liquor store. Now they're running the craft beer game all over the place. So, Mo, appreciate you as always. And I actually have my own beer with Arrow Lodge Brewing called Mike Drop that is going to be re-released in next month, I was told today. So it's an horchata beer. It has my logo on there with Craft Beer Kings and with Arrow Lodge. We had a party last year and all that other good stuff. Actually, no, it's 2 years ago. Wow, time flies. So
horchata flavored, huh? What does that taste like? Does it taste good? I would imagine it does, right?
Yeah, it's an horchata flavored milk stout. So it's actually pretty good. So I'll get you some. We'll be all right. All right, let's see. The program hasn't crashed. Okay, let me give him my solo shot. Let me breathe a little bit. Let me do the intro. All right, here we go. Another edition of Living the Dream. Today's guest is somebody who I've watched for a few years. I've only met him a couple times, but I've seen him hustle and keep on going and continue to grow at the NFL Network. Before the NFL was in LA, I had no reason to see this guy because he's not going to Laker games, he's not going to Dodger games, he's not around me, and I'm not going over there. But I would see him, and I'm not watching the NFL Network all the time. But I saw him go from being on the update desk to now hosting on Sundays, and now you see him all over the NFL on Sundays during the games. He is a guy who kind of resembles me in the fact that you just put your head down, shut up, and work. But at the same time, and you look around, you're like, damn, I'm the only one. Well, he didn't know this until I brought it up to him. NFL Network, he is the only Mexican-American on the air. We've talked about this in the past, how I don't want to be that guy beating down the brown, we got to get more people in there. No, if you're at the network level, it means you got to be talented. But the pipeline of where we can go, that's where guys like Omar and myself, we're trying to help the younger generation, both male and female. If you're young and you want to get into this business, first we tell you don't do it because it sucks, it's terrible, there are no jobs. But if you want to and you have that guy on us, We're going to help you along the way. And I would see him from a distance. Finally, met each other a couple years ago at a Chargers practice, and it was like that Spider-Man meme. It was like, we're pointing at each other, like, oh, wow, you do exist. Like, cool. We got together, had a couple cocktails not too long ago, and just like a lot of similarities of the hustle where you're at. And you're like, damn. The thing about the Latino broadcasters is that we never get together, and it's usually crabs in the bucket mentality. And in the sports world, there's not that many of us to begin with. So you want to go and tell somebody's story. So I've been trying to get Omar on for a while. And because of this Dudes the NFL Network, I want to make sure that that was priority number one. But now, as the season is winding down, we're in the playoffs, the championship games, we can get him on. All I know about this dude, I don't know much about him, is that he's a hustler. He can get after it. He will chase it. And he just doesn't take no for an answer. I know that he went to Syracuse for grad school, but I don't know much before that. All I know is that today's guest, I'm looking forward to it. Can't wait to have him on. And you know why? Because we're still here, 6 minutes in, and the computer didn't crash. Let's bring him on, the one and only Omar Ruiz.
Yeah, Beto, I'm excited to be here because for your Beto Vision podcast network, I feel like Living the Dream is your signature podcast. This is the one I always see out there, and I've had friends, like you mentioned, that have been on here. So this is a cool opportunity where I know you're not really going to ask me about football and Patrick Mahomes and all this. You're asking me about me. So it's a cool opportunity to share my story, which I'm always happy to do, and especially with you, someone who I know always looks out for us and to promote people that look like us out there. It's an honor to be here for sure.
Yeah, and we'll touch on that later on because we both in our careers just want to be known for being the best reporter. It's like, who happens to be Mexican? Because I don't even know how many times you've been told, hey, you should go work for Deportes. But that's another conversation for another day. This is how, if you're watching this on YouTube right now, when we started this podcast, the sun was out. That was 2 hours ago. So we're still going, Omar. Here it is. Give us your title, your job duties, and what exactly you do.
Well, I work at NFL Network. I'm primarily a news reporter. I've also hosted shows. I've done the 1-minute updates on the news desk. This year I started hosting some of the Sunday shows, a show called Game Day Live. It's the only in-game highlight show in the NFL. So did that, a few Sundays, do NFL Now, Total Access on occasion. I've even anchored, going all the way back to the 2012 season, the Baltimore Ravens championship parade. So I have had a variety of roles, but primarily it's been out in the field as a news reporter from the different stadiums, facilities, news-making events through the years. And, I love football, so whatever they ask me to do, I'm down for it. You mentioned the work ethic. It's all part of it. Whatever they need, I do.
Exactly. It's get in where you can fit in, because to go from doing that 1-minute update and you're working there, and for those people who don't know, they're in the commercial, they show you doing a job, and you're like, hey, here's the news, and you're like, yeah, I'm working, but then it's like, I want to go to a game, I want to have more responsibilities, but you got to pay your dues. Where'd you grow up?
So I was born in LA at a hospital called Queen of Angels Hospital, and we're big Dodger fans, and so the claim to fame, for Dodger lore is that's where Walter O'Malley passed away, the Dodgers owner that moved them to LA, and as legend has it, my mom says that I was sort of, destined to work in entertainment or, TV and all this because Cher was supposedly filming a movie in the hospital when I was born there at Queen of Angels Hospital. So my dad went to UCLA Law School. Both my parents were the first in their families to go to college. While my dad was finishing up at UCLA Law, we lived over in Culver City, which coincidentally is right down the street from NFL Network studios right now, where I currently work. So it's all kind of come full circle. But when I was one, after my dad passed the bar, he got a job at the Ventura County Public Defender's Office, and we moved to Oxnard, where my dad is from. And so I lived there, and on the weekends we would go to Santa Anita. My mom is from Santa Ana in Orange County. And so kind of grew up, both places, but primarily in Oxnard. But both my parents kind of grew up in Southern California, had kind of gotten tired of the hustle and bustle. So when I was 10, they moved us to Sacramento. And so kind of growing up, I became kind of half NorCal, half SoCal. And so that's kind of the Cliff Notes version of my background, my history.
I
But
was wondering that because you're like a Sacramento guy, but then you were like all LA. So I'm like, what's going on with this guy? But
yeah, well, because like it's interesting. We did the Brandon Staley press conference, the new Chargers head coach today, and he said that he was, reading the sports page or the newspaper at 6 years old. I remember reading the LA Times at 5 years old, and I was just one of those kids, knew all the trivia, all the stats, and my uncles and my Theos and everybody would quiz me on, hey, what's the Dodgers lineup? What's the Lakers statistics right now? So my dad was a diehard Dodger fan, Laker fan, all that. So all of my sports were already ingrained in me, die hard by the time we were 10 and moved to Sacramento. And as a matter of fact, we moved in March of '89. So both the Lakers and the Dodgers were defending champions at that time. So I went up to NorCal, all Dodger gear, starter jacket, Lakers stuff, all championship stuff, and then and then like at that time I already knew what the Dodgers Giants rivalry was all about. So there was no chance I could switch there. And in those days, if you remember, the Sacramento Kings were irrelevant; they were just terrible. And I'm coming from being a Laker fan, where in my lifetime watching them. Showtime era, they had already won 5 titles, so there was no chance that I was switching for them. So I maintained my allegiance. It's as far as my football teams, it's interesting because, like I said, my mom's from Santa Ana, Santa Anita, and we'd all go to my grandma and grandma's on Sundays, and everybody would be there watching the Rams games, down the street from Anaheim Stadium, Eric Dickerson, all that era. And so the Rams were my first favorite team. And then at some point during my childhood, the Raiders and Al Davis decided to move the Raiders training camp to Oxnard, which is where the Cowboys currently have their training camp. So when that happened, I became more of a Raider fan because then, you'd see like Howie Long out at the restaurant and stuff and taking part in the Chamber of Commerce type things. So I became more of a Raider fan. And then obviously when we moved to Sacramento, the Raiders followed suit a couple years later. So it became easier to follow them as opposed to the Rams, who eventually moved to St. Louis. But anyway, that's the sort of background for those sports teams and why I'm so loyal to the LA team, even though I grew up as a teenager in high school and all that in Sacramento.
Where'd you go to college?
So I went to San Diego State for undergrad and Syracuse for grad, but I went to JUCO too. I went to Cosumnes River College, Sierra College, Sac City College. I took a couple classes at American River College, the whole Los Rios community college system there in Sacramento. I wanted to be a baseball player, like a pro ball player.
Really?
That was my first. Yeah, I grew up, playing sports and, was always a pretty good athlete. And so that was my first dream. And then once I realized, okay, I'm not good enough to make it to the majors, and I was like, I got to focus on school. And that's when I decided on San Diego State. Like I said, my dad went to UCLA. He was there during the John Wooden times. So he kind of raised me on the Bruins and grew up a diehard UCLA fan. We go to the Rose Bowl, watch football games and all that. But they didn't have a journalism program. They had a communications program, but not specifically journalism. And San Diego State had that. And one of my best friends in high school, his older brother was the roommate of the San Diego State quarterback when we were in high school. So we'd go down and visit. And so we're at these parties with the San Diego State starting quarterback. So we're a good old time there in San Diego. So it was a very easy sell to make that transition from, wanting to go to UCLA to eventually going to San Diego State.
When did you think, okay, I'm going to major in journalism?
Given, my background and everything, being a diehard Dodger and Laker fan, I grew up with Vince Scully and Chick Hearn. And I just remember that, and like I said, I was reading the paper at 5 years old and all that. I just remember thinking way back when that, man, it would be cool to be like them, where I could go to the games and be paid for it. Like, that would be so cool. But it was just a fleeting thought, because like I said, I wanted to be a big league baseball player. So but it was there in the back of my head. But it's like, that's the thing. We talk about representation and, seeing things, and then you can visualize that to me was like, so far-fetched at the time, when you think about being a sportscaster, it was like being an astronaut, you know what I mean? And so, but I remember being in high school, I did the public address announcing. And then when I was in high school, at a football game. I remember the local NBC broadcaster, Channel 3 in Sacramento, came out to our game, and he was just a real person that I saw on TV, and he was there with his camera guy and in his jeans and his shirt and tie, and I was like, oh, like he's a real person. Like you could actually be a new sports fan. You know what I mean? Like, it was just so weird to see him, and then it clicked for me at that moment that I could do that too, like him. And so that was like the first instance. And then again, so that like I had fun doing the public address. I saw that guy. His name was Ron Hyde at a football game in high school. And then that's when it really started going. And so then I started taking classes that were kind of focused in communication. And so that way, when I did decide like, okay, I have no chance to be a bigger, let me focus on that aspect of it. And journalism was the way to go.
People who are loyal to the podcast, who know me, are right now telling themselves, is this Beto talking or is it Omar talking? Because we've heard these stories. Omar, we are similar. I think we're similar in age too. I'm 42. And
oh, yeah, me too. Same.
Okay, so you were the NorCal version of me because I delivered the LA Times. I delivered the Daily Breeze, the local paper. I would put it into the news racks with my dad, and I was a Daily Breeze paper boy. So wow. I would always read the sports page before delivery. That's back when the Daily Breeze, the local paper in Southern California, had an afternoon edition. So I was in elementary. I'd go to school, go do my paper route, and then go play sports. And then on the weekends, I would put the news paper into the news racks. People would go buy and stuff like that.
That's crazy.
In high school, I was the editor of the sports page for the Trailblazer in my high school because they got me out of the other classes and they got me into the games for free. Subconsciously, I guess I always wanted to do it, but I didn't know that how or you could kind of do that. It just wasn't a thought of it. And I, like you, I was like, I want to play baseball. I'm going to do this. And I went to El Camino Junior College and I was like, I'm going to go. And then the first day there, I'm like, oh, I need to go to class because these guys are freaking studs right here. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I wanted to work in sports. I took every single class that I kept dropping. I was a 20-game winner because I had a bunch of W's, I always like to say. And I had to go to another junior college to clear my grades. And then I took an internship finally. And it was like, wow, the light bulb went on. So there's so many similar paths of what's going on. And I kid you not, I swear to you, we were probably at the same San Diego State parties because I had friends down there. And I was the kid who didn't go to my classes at my school, but I'd sit in class at UCLA. I sit in class at USC. Like, dude, when Sunset Village opened up at UCLA, we're out there working on asada. Me and Steeza were out there grilling for our friends who would go there. At SC, my friend Edgar and my friend Angela who went to SC, like, I knew about Annenberg and the Marshall School of Business at SC, and I'd go sit in those classes. I'm not enrolled there. I was just like, because I was a smart kid, so I liked the classes. And at San Diego State, come Thursday night, we're ready to go on our way to Rosarito and Papa's and Beer. So you would stop off in there. And I swear to you, we're at Montezuma Hall. That was one of them at San Diego State. Oh, yeah.
Monties.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, because we're the same age and all that good stuff. Yeah, we had a good old time at San Diego State. And, there's always, I guess, part of me that.
Wait, who was the quarterback you were talking about? What's his name? Was it Jack Hawley?
No, Kevin McKechnie.
Okay, because there was a quarterback named Jack Hawley at San Diego State too, who was around the same age. He's now in Vegas. He played baseball in this area, so guys would go down there and see him. So it's a small. It's like I said, we don't know each other, but we know each other. Right? We're that guy. That's why when I saw you, I was like, whoa, we got to do this. So you graduate San Diego State. What did you want to do, and how did you do it?
Yeah, so at that point. I had done well at San Diego State. There was a student radio station, and I started a sports show, which, even like 10 years after I'd graduated, it had still been going on. So I was real proud of that fact. But I basically started doing the sports report in the news broadcast for that radio station, and the news director at the time was a classmate of mine in the journalism classes. And then I asked her, hey, would you mind if we did a sports show, a fully dedicated sports show? And she was like, yeah, that'd be awesome. So I produced, hosted, I eventually had like a staff of 5 reporters that would cover different beats, different teams going on at San Diego State. I would do football and basketball, of course, and so that got launched. I did well in all my classes at San Diego State. I did internships there, and for lack of a better term, I kicked ass pretty good at San Diego State. But I had this vision that, and learning doing the internships, I knew you were going to have to grind at probably a small market and move to the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, or South Dakota, all these kind of things that you kind of have to pay your dues. And so I was like, I'm willing to do that, but I got to make sure that there's a big payoff at the end, because here I was, living at the beach in San Diego, having a good old time, going to Rosarito on the weekends and Puerto Rico, getting my lobster. I just had a really great life. And I just felt like if I wasn't a sportscaster, I would be very happy here living in San Diego, just doing whatever, selling insurance, just whatever, just living life.
Shit, so Pacific Beach? Come on now.
I live in Mission Beach, 3 blocks from the roller coaster.
Oh.
So, you can imagine, the fun and
there's a reason that there's people out there our age who look like they're burnouts because they graduated, they never left. It's like,
exactly.
Let me go play over the line, let me play a little hacky sack, and
over the line. Over at Treasure Island Beach or whatever it's called.
Yeah, exactly, man.
So in other words, I was like, then the thought got into my head about, okay, if I'm going to do this, and this was, no offense to any part of the country, but I'm a California guy through and through. I just didn't want to have my career end, in a small market, in the Midwest or something, and not fulfill my dreams to do it back in California, because obviously, LA, San Diego, San Francisco, Sacramento, those are all pretty big markets that you kind of have to climb your way to. So before I made that full commitment into it, I was like, well, let me go see if I can compete with, the best kids in the country. I kicked butt here in San Diego, but let me go see if I can compete against the best kids at Syracuse, because, Syracuse, the Newhouse School of Public Communication, has produced Marv Albert and Bob Costas and Mike Tirico and the names that go on and on and on. So all the kids that go there, are fully focused in becoming big-time sportscasters and everything like that. And my thought process was, okay, if I go there and I kick butt there too, then, okay, that'll tell me, okay, I can go for it and eventually, make my way to, the highest levels of broadcasting. And if I don't, let's say, I go there, I was good for San Diego, but I wasn't really that good, at the national scene, then I would have a master's degree, and then I could teach communications and still have that good life, back at the beach, like I initially thought. So for me, it was a win-win situation. And so that's what got me into thinking about going to Syracuse. And so after I graduated San Diego State, all this was coming to a head. Do I fully pursue the sportscasting thing? Do I live at keep living the beach life in San Diego? And kind of my buddies and one of my cousins, we decided to do the whole Europe thing after graduation, where we saved a bunch of money. We went to Europe and backpacked around and had a good old time, saw the sights and stuff like that. When we're over there, you meet people from all over the country, all over the world. And I just remember sitting with these, groups of people at the hostels, graduates of Harvard and Princeton and Yale, all these Ivy Leaguers. And we're having, these high level intellectual conversations and everything. And it just sort of dawned on me that like, hey, I'm just as smart as these guys. They're they have, obviously the Harvard degree and the Ivy League pedigree and all that. But sort of intellectually, I'm right there with them. They're going to go off back home and work in finance or whatever and live their dreams. Why can't I live my dream and really pursue it? And so that was the sort of catalyst to go through with the whole Syracuse thing. And so, so I get back after that trip from Europe, I apply to Syracuse, I get in, I go there, I do well there too. And so then that really was like solidified. Okay, I'm going to go for it. And here we are, 16, 17 years later,
And for those wondering, like Syracuse is the elite program, them along with Northwestern. When you're going to get a master's, it's you graduate from there, you're getting a job somewhere. Like people ask me, should I get a master's degree in broadcast? I always tell them, no, I don't. Unless you're at Syracuse or Northwestern, because it's just a different world when you come out of those monsters. And if you can't hack it there, and you're saving yourself some money, because then you're not going to get a job somewhere else. Because the guys who and ladies who graduate from those programs are essentially you're major league ready. That's how good you are. But I want to go back to this Europe part. No, because it's called living the dream. You had that realization of like, hey, these guys are going to go be on Wall Street and make a bunch of money, and they're going to have ulcers at 25. Like I always talk about my friends they say that they're rich and a son of a bitch because they hate everything about it. And you were basically taking a vow of poverty to get into the media game you're in your 30s, or I'm still doing it now, I'm living in the garage. But you're knowing that you want to be fulfilled inside. And that Europe trip, which I never did, but I went to Europe last year for the first time, I can't stress that enough about how you just got to get out there and don't be in such a rush to start your career unless you've lived a little bit. And I know things are different now with hostels and how you can't really travel, all that other stuff. But those months of self-reflection, I think, had a huge impact on you, not just for going to grad school, for life, didn't it?
Yeah, well, it just gave me that sort of confidence, that I, for the most part, I'd never been exposed to any, Ivy League kids or, had those experiences. And so, seeing all that just kind of come together, it all sort of clicked. And another, speaking of Europe, another sort of confidence booster or check mark along the way that sort of helped out was at the end of my Syracuse grad school year. It's a 36 degree program where you do 6 units one summer, 12 units the fall, 12 units the spring, and then 6 units the next summer. At the end of that summer, I had one more credit that I was getting for an internship to be working for NBC or an intern for NBC in Athens for the 2004 Olympics. Oh. And so I worked in Athens that summer for that Olympics. And that was another moment where not only, and so there's about 90 interns, probably 50 of them were from Syracuse, 20 of them were from George Washington and Washington, D.C., and then 20 were kind of scattered from all over, that maybe they knew somebody at NBC that was kind of new of the program. And for the most part, 90% of the interns were just kind of logging tape at the broadcast center where everything was headquartered. And there was about 10 of us that kind of got filtered out for whatever reason to do jobs that people were hired to do, but they just couldn't fill enough of those jobs. So my job was an actual runner at the gymnastics venue. So I was working with Dave Michaels, who is Al Michaels' brother, who was the producer of the gymnastics. He also produced, in those days, the figure skating, so basically the big, huge events that people watch in the Summer Olympics. I was working with that crew, and these are, the best of the best sports cameramen in the world, the best sports audio people in the world, producers, all this and that I was sort of being exposed to on a daily basis. And that, again, was another kind of check mark that I'm with the sort of best in the world in broadcasting here. I belong here. Like, I can do this at this level. So not only was, that Europe thing that I talked about, kind of hanging out with all those Ivy League kids was like, okay, I can go fulfill my dream, period. And then that second Europe trip, working on that crew in Athens, was like, I can not only fulfill my dream, but then I can do it at the highest levels of broadcasting. I feel like I belong there. So again, it kind of speaks to your point. You got to, live, you got to experience, you got to meet people, all that, because all that sort of stuff is just outside of whatever sort of career path you could ever give advice for, as far as, which degree should I major in? All of that is just completely supplementing all that sort of stuff and kind of guides the internal fortitude that you need to succeed in whatever you do.
That's that approach of where you're going. And I know there's probably people listening right now going, yeah, well, he went to Syracuse, that's why he got it. Well, you know what, people? He had to find a way to get to Syracuse. He had to find a way to apply, because nobody's going to come find you. Omar Ruiz at San Diego State, nobody's going to come and say, hey, let's give you this. Everything that you had achieved at that time was up to a point of like, you got to figure it out. Where did that come from, that attitude of, I need to make this happen, instead of just kind of going along?
Well, I think, I credit to my parents, when, like I said, I wanted to be a baseball player. And, I was always, smart, took, AP and honors classes in high school and all that sort of stuff. And I was just one of those kids that I just kind of had to show up to class and would get A's and B's without doing much of the work. I would just sort of absorb everything. So I kind of took that attitude into college.
We are the same. We are the same.
And so my grades in college, I was trying to be, Beto, I would go lift like at noon. I would go for extra BP at like 1. The practice would start at 2:30. We'd have a 2.5 hour practice, and then I do stretching, for another half hour. So I was getting like 6 hours a day to baseball. And then I was like, still, I'm not that good, compared to all these guys. So, that's what kind of, set in, like I said, earlier to fulfill something else. But anyway, I didn't really care too much about school, the academic part of it, and just showing up to class, didn't work wonders with the grades. So anyway, my parents at some point, they sat me down and they said, Omar, we don't care what you do. Like I said, my dad's a lawyer. My mom, first in her family to graduate college, was a professional. And they said, we don't care what you do. You could be a doctor. You could be a janitor. You could be a chef. You could be a cop. You could do whatever you want to do. As long as you give it your 110%,
mm-hmm.
You can do it. At the same time, they also said, we're not going to pay for any more of your education. We put you through, Catholic school your whole life. We helped you out in junior college. But if you're going to do this, whatever you want to do, you have to do it for you. Don't do it for us. You got to do it for you. Oof. And so you can imagine just like the, oh shit, the kind of gravity of all of that, and, kind of processing through all that. And so all those decisions that, I talked about making and all those different influences along the way that impacted it, was because like I was doing it for me, and it was, financed by me, and it was,
mm-hmm.
me taking that risk, so like going to Syracuse, I had to justify paying that, tuition money because it was coming out of my pocket. Mom and dad worked for that. Going to San Diego, all that was coming out of my pocket. So, and I worked, even though, I had that student radio show, I got good grades at San Diego State. I worked full time, 40 hours a week, even more so. I worked loss prevention at Nordstrom's down there, making sure people aren't shoplifting. But in other words, I did a job that was 40 hours a week where people that was their job, that was their career. And so, I couldn't, just show up hungover one day. I kind of had to take it serious. And sort of everything along that line was all just kind of fueled by my own ganas, what I wanted to do, what I wanted to get out in life. And so to answer your question, that kind of set that off, was it just came from this internal desire to, want the life that I kind of now have. And all those different check marks along the way were just sort of validating the decisions that I had made.
So you come back from the Olympics, you're Syracuse. What's your first job?
It's interesting. It's so funny. It's my first introduction to how ruthless TV can be.
Oh, okay.
So when I was in school, I got a job at the local NBC. They needed a number 3 sportscaster at the Syracuse NBC station. So basically, when the weekend guy would need the weekend off, the number 1 guy that works Monday through Friday didn't have to work 7 days a week, and then vice versa. When the weekend guy had to fill in for the main guy during the week, I would fill in for that weekend guy. So in other words, I was hired while I was still in school, which, you can imagine everybody at Syracuse applied for that job, on actual local television. And I got that job in April of 2004. So I was still in school, and I talked to all my professors, and I said, hey, I'm probably gonna have to miss some class, and I'm gonna be behind on assignments.
Yeah, I got a job.
Yeah, and they're like, well, that's what we're preparing you to do. So whatever you need, if you need to turn in a paper late, whatever, so they're really good with it. And I did that job. And while the end of my school year, so I still had that internship in Athens to get my last credit to actually get my degree, but our actual academic sort of calendar ended at the end of June. And so I was thinking, like, what am I going to do between the end of June and the beginning of August when I had to leave for that internship? Because, to go all the way back to California would have been, cost prohibitive. And then what if, like, my first job when I get back from Athens was on the East Coast, and then I moved my stuff to California, then back to the East Coast. So I was like, what the heck am I doing? But anyway, at the end of June 2004, one of our reporters at that NBC station was in the reserves for the Army. He got called into active duty when the war in Afghanistan started, and so we had an opening at the station, and the news director said, "Hey, Omar, I know you're a sports guy, but do you want to try doing news?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. Whatever it takes." And so I started doing reporting on news during the week and the weekends.
Okay.
And so that's what I did until August. It was time to go to the Olympics. And the news director sits me down again, and she goes, "Hey, I know you're making $8 an hour, working 20 hours a week or whatever it is. I'll offer you a full-time job with benefits if you don't take this internship in Athens." And obviously, full-time jobs in TV, especially to start, are just so few and far in between.
Yeah.
And like, I had to think about it. It was a no-brainer for me, because I felt like that was perhaps a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do that internship at Athens. Plus, I had to pay already like $3,000 for the hotel and airfare and all that I had already committed.
It's the Olympics. You got to go do it. You got to.
So, and plus, I needed that one credit for my degree. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I told her thanks, but no thanks. But she said, "Okay, well, I'm not promising you anything when you get back." And I said, "All right, I'll take my chances." So a couple of weeks before the Olympics are over and it's supposed to time for me to come back, to the United States, I email her. I didn't hear anything. Like, she didn't respond at all.
Oh.
About a week before my flight home, I email her again. "Hey, Kathy, just want to follow up. What's going on? What are you thinking?" Nothing. 2 days before my flight home, and at this time, I'm thinking. So what I ended up doing was I packed all my stuff, and I had a Ford Explorer. I packed all my stuff in my car, drove it down to my buddy's house in New Jersey, and left my car at his parents' house for the summer. So my plan at that point was I was going to fly back to New York, get my car, drive back to my parents in California, and then see what happens. Okay. And so 2 days before all that was supposed to, put the wheels in motion, I finally get an email back, and she goes, "Hey, Jim, our investigative reporter, had a heart attack, and so we're thinking about shuffling things around. Do you want to come back and be our morning news reporter?" And that shift is like, 3 a.m. to, 7 a.m. or whatever, for the 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. news, the local news before the Today Show comes on. And so I said, yeah, I need a job, I had nothing lined up. So I said yes. And so I flew back, and I, got my buddy's stuff. I go back to Syracuse, and, I think I found a apartment real quick and all that. And so I started doing morning news hits for that year. So that year in Syracuse after my grad school year, when I got back from the Olympics, I was the morning news reporter for the morning news program. And so Beto, there I was. I was the guy out at 5 a.m. when it was -20 wind chill in Syracuse, saying, "Do not let your kids go outside. Nobody go outside for longer than 2 minutes." But I'm that knucklehead out there, freezing, reporting on how cold it was, telling you don't go outside. But look at me, how cold I am. So anyway, I did that. That was my job for a year. And I guess, from a broadcasting standpoint, I had 15 live reps every single day. So I had like about
That's
7
awesome.
VOs that I would throw to a soundbite. And then I would have also, those 10 to 15 second live teases.
So you're on a roll. You're on a roll. You're doing it. Everything's good for you. All right. So then you go, and then how many cities did you move to? Give me from Syracuse.
From Syracuse
to NFL Network.
My first full-time sports job was in Monterey, Salinas, Santa Cruz. where I ended up meeting my wife. She was a producer. And then after that, I went to Columbus, Ohio. So I was there for about 15 months back in NorCal. And that was a dream, doing my first full-time sports job. Then I go to Columbus, and I worked there for about 3.5 years.
Okay.
And then after that, so that was a crazy situation, how that came to an end. We were in the middle of football season when my 3-year contract expired. And so I didn't want to sign another 3-year contract. I felt like I had put in my time there. I had kind of gotten out of the job what I, intended to. I wasn't going to be a lifer. I'm a California guy. I wanted to get back home. And so I said, let's talk about extending after this. Let's just get through football season. You can imagine in Columbus, Ohio State, how big football is there. Let's just talk about contract and stuff after the season. Long story short, we decided to part ways there in January. And meanwhile, my wife, who is in the business, my girlfriend at the time, had just gotten a job at that station that I worked at to launch a whole new show, which wasn't launching until like March or April. So because my initial thought was like, okay, I'm done here. Let's move back to California and let's see what we can make happen. But she couldn't leave because she had just taken that job and she was charged with launching this show. So I kind of like, from January to April, I flew back to California. I went to like every TV station from like Redding all the way down to San Diego, just dropping off my tapes, trying to get meetings with news directors in Sacramento, San Luis Obispo, you name it. And for the most part, got, doors slammed in my face. Nobody really, was going to meet with me, or, a few people did, which was great. But anyway, after about May, I had convinced she was my fiance at the time. We eventually got engaged over there. I said, let's move back. Let's move to LA. She always wanted to get into entertainment news, like Entertainment Tonight was her dream show. And so let's go to LA. You can try to get into the entertainment world. I can see what sort of things happen for me. And if not, then, we're both smart people.
Hold on. All right, so for the people who don't know the business, that's what you do. You start off, you go small market, you keep bigger and bigger. You're rising. So you're in Columbus, it just ends. You ain't got no job. You're going all over to California looking for a job. And you just decide to say, hey, let's go to LA, which is market number two. Market number 2, the only one bigger is New York. And you're just going to say, F it, let me just go knock on some doors. And here I am.
Basically.
Here I am. I was a big shot in the minor leagues of Columbus because that's where the minor league teams are at. No offense to the Blue Jackets and Rick Nash. But you just show up in LA and be like, hey, what's up, guys? I'm here. Hire me.
So that just shows you, the sort of confidence level I have. And check this out. You're not going to believe this, Beto. So that's, we drive. I think we left on April 30th, 2010. We pull up to my grandma's in Oxnard, like May 4th, May 5th, maybe even Cinco de Mayo. And we crashed with my grandma for a few days while we look for an apartment in LA somewhere. And while all this is happening, like I said, we're engaged.
Hold on, mijo. Let's take this back a little bit. You go to Abuelita's house in La Colonia in Oxnard.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Who has probably been telling everybody, Mijo's on TV. I'm so proud of him. He has a master's from Syracuse. Oh, he's this, and this. You show up with a U-Haul without a job and a girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're Mexican. You're Mexican.
She's making the chilaquiles every day that morning. We'd go run at the beach, and we come back and have this, beautiful spread with frijoles and papas.
But you don't have a job. Mijo.
But I don't have a job.
But you just come on in.
And meanwhile, we're planning this wedding. We're planning this wedding for that November up in Monterey, where we met. So
which is not cheap.
We're planning this beautiful wedding at the Monterey Plaza Inn, where we have, and we're getting married at the Carmel Mission, right there where
and Clint Eastwood. Yeah.
And all that. And
go to Pebble Beach afterwards,
Yeah, Pebble beach, all that.
All that good
all
stuff.
that's not.
Yeah,
And
you
my
don't
wife-
have a job. She don't have a job. But let's plan an extravagant wedding. We're great. We have nowhere to live. We have no real resources. We know people, but not really. Oh, and by the way, let's get into the. We're trying to get into the toughest business. Yeah, sure. Why not?
Well, yeah. I'm going to keep me laughing right now because what the absurdity of it, people don't believe. You know that even when my wife was leaving, the job in Columbus, they're like, "Wait, you're moving to California without a job, nothing promised, nothing."
Don't you know how expensive it is?
Yeah, and people still couldn't believe it. But Bethel, that was the confidence level that I had even back then, that like I would make it, and even my wife was like, we shouldn't do this wedding. We don't have jobs. This is expensive. And I said, listen, over the course of our lives, we're going to make enough money that we'll pay for that wedding at some point, but we'll never be able to supplement the memories that we'll make, with the mariachis and all this, sort of dream wedding that, I had envisioned and everything that, in our families is very important. And so anyway, so we did it, the mariachis, the whole nine, the church wedding, the big reception at the hotel and all that. And like I said, it all worked out here. I could say that 10 and a half years later, but yeah, it was pretty stressful, charging everything. But again, I had that internal fortitude, the vision to see that, we'll make it.
One more time. We're alike. We're alike. Now, let's go. This has to happen. You come from a big family, right?
Yeah. My mom's one of 11. My dad's one of 7.
Okay, so you were. We all got those hating cousins. They're like, oh, you think you're all bad. You're all doing this. You're all doing that. And then you come back and they're the same hating cousins are like, see, I told you. He ain't got no job. He should just go sell cars. He should just be, he should do real estate like over here, like your shady cousins. Hey, what's up, guys? Anyways, were there people going, hey, Omar, like, give up on that little dream already, man. Why don't you go get a real job now at that time?
No, they just couldn't believe that, nobody thought that, but they just couldn't believe that I was sort of doing all this without anything promised.
How many people thought you got fired?
I would say a lot because like the circumstances in which I left and like, did I leave? Did I get fired? I wasn't sure. That again, that's a long story that I made really, really short.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think people, might have thought that.
Because that's what we do. It's what we do. We the cheeseman is good, bro. The cheeseman is good. You gotta make up some kind of story. Omar got fired, and that's why he brought a girl with him. He's using her credit card for the wedding.
Well, no, I mean the thing that happened with that whole situation was, this was back in 2009, 2010 when the economy, down the tank. Everybody was making cuts, and we just weren't covering stuff anymore. And so, I was so enormously frustrated with the job, and like in my head, I'm living out in Columbus, Ohio, away from my whole world, all of my family and friends in California. I'm a beach guy. I love the Pacific Ocean. I'm living in a place where, you don't see sun for weeks at a time, literally. And I'm busting my ass every single day, till 2-3 in the morning. And meanwhile, the people at the station, the higher ups, the executives, they're telling you local sports doesn't matter anymore. If they want to get their sports, they'll watch ESPN, and just really kind of chopping at that. And I was like, I'm dedicating my whole life to this, and you're telling me it's not important. And so, when we had that sort of like contract postponement, it was like a 6-month addition to my contract that was going to expire in March. But there was like a little clause there. There was a little clause in the thing. And as I said, my dad's a lawyer, so I'd read all these little details of the contract. It said, if either party wants to depart, all you have to do is give it 10 days notice. And it really was for the station to be able to kind of get rid of me any time in that 6 months. But read it, and I had my dad look at it, and it said either party. So at some point, I said, hey, look, once the Ohio State made the Rose Bowl that year, and they didn't sort of like bring us all out there. So I was pissed at that. I was like, you could have sent me for free. I could have just stayed, with all my aunts and uncles or cousins in LA, the Rose Bowl and all that. So basically, once they didn't need me anymore, I put in that 10-day notice, and then there's a dispute. Did they get rid of me before that 10 days, or did my 10-day contract or my notice expire? Because I just gave my clip to my wife, who then took it in to the work. So I just turned in my thing, and that was kind of that. And so, so depending on how you interpret that, you could examine. But basically, the thing was is I have so much more to give than what this place can allow me to grow anymore. I felt like that's why I felt like there was nowhere for me to grow anymore. You're telling me my job is sort of meaningless and sort of, degrading. I want to do more. I want to work more. And you're telling me, it's not important. That was just a tough thing for me to swallow. So I said, okay, well, if I'm going to, live this life, and it's a struggle, none of this is easy. At least I'm going to do it in LA, where, I have people, and it's where I would want to live eventually. So that's
it goes back to believing in yourself and being fulfilled in yourself and being happy. You could have stayed in Columbus and, hey, do the job, but then at the same time, treat it as a job. It's called living the dream, not living the job. So take me to NFL Network. Before that, weren't you working retail? Is that true?
Yeah. So in 2010, we moved, like I said, in May. We had to find jobs real quick. I was able to get a job teaching at UCLA, a summer school program through the Department of Recreation. It was magazine writing and production. So I got that job through the summer, so just get some sort of income. My wife gets a job at Massage Envy as like an assistant manager, checking people in for their massages out in Marina Del Rey. We lived, I think our first little apartment was in Culver City, and then we went out to like Playa Del Rey. We shared a room with a lady who had a room open. And our place in Culver City, where we lived the first 3 months, was like a converted garage. So this is like, bare bones type, just trying to make it happen. Like really that LA story, you hear the, actors and stuff that come out here and, live on couches or whatever. That's kind of what we were doing as an engaged couple. So I get that job at UCLA. She gets a job at Massage Envy. And then, but it's not enough necessarily to pay the bills. So I get a job at the Apple store. And that, so I had the sort of financial means at that point, taking a full-time job there, and to continue to support my dream to do sportscasting. And working at the Apple store in LA, it is just full of musicians, actors, creative types. So the manager type people were real flexible with schedules. So if I had an interview or had to, take a side job or whatever, they were real understanding and let us do that. And so at that time, I met a lady who introduced me to the UCLA athletic department. And so she got my foot in the door there to do play-by-play for the Olympic sports like water polo, women's soccer, volleyball. So I was still kind of staying sharp from the broadcasting side. I also did public address for the baseball team back when, Trevor Bauer and Garrett Cole were playing for them. So that was real exciting, time for that UCLA baseball program. So I did that. So I stayed active with the sportscasting. And then while I was there doing all that, I got a call. I have an agent that the NHL network needs somebody to immediately start working for them, because what happened was
hockey.
Yeah, hockey.
Okay.
And so when I worked at Monterey, Salinas, Santa Cruz, that was when the NHL had the strike in 2004, 2005. Mm-hmm. And so even though I was working in the small market below San Francisco market, the San Jose Sharks drove down to the little small market station. They took me out to lunch, and they said, "Hey, Omar, if you come cover us, because they needed all the, publicity they could get coming back from all the bad, publicity that the strike had brought them.
Mm-hmm.
If you come cover us, we'll treat you, we'll roll out the red carpet. We'll treat you like a big league market TV station. And so sure enough, they lived that. And so when they had opening night, I remember them bringing us Patrick Marlowe, who was the captain at the time of the Sharks. And recently, I think he retired recently after all these years, but we had him live on the 6 o'clock newscast, and I would get all the post-game interviews that I'd want. And they really did treat me well, and I'd go up and cover the playoffs and all that. And so so I had that introduction to hockey, and then in Columbus, of course, I covered the Blue Jackets, on a daily basis, and was there when they played their first playoff game ever at Joe Louis Arena in Detroit. And so I had hockey familiarity at that point. And then once I found out that I was going to get hired, and it's funny how everything kind of works out. And this is a good story, maybe for this here. When I was in that time between leaving Columbus and this NHL Network gig, I had a couple of auditions with ESPN, one in Bristol and one in LA. The one in Bristol, I think, was they were auditioning for what eventually became the Longhorn Network, for the University of Texas. And I didn't get the job, but I felt like my audition went well, and that was kind of that. And then a few months later, I had the audition at ESPN LA for like a finance reporter, which I knew I didn't really have a chance with. But but Aisha Cheney, who I know you've mentioned on this show, ended up producing, and I didn't know Aisha at the time, but she ended up producing my audition, and so I got to know her, and it ended up being where one of my best friends from college at San Diego State, one of my old roommates, went to high school with her. We got along really well, and so I think
no way.
She felt really invested to making sure my audition went really good, and put her, instead of looking at it as like an assignment that like, oh my God, I got to do this audition for this guy. She really kind of, not that she wouldn't anyway, but we had that kind of special connection when we made that common friend.
Yeah.
She produced a great show for me. I thought I did well. And again, I didn't get the job, but in other words, with ESPN, I put two good resume audition reels together. So when this NHL situation's happening, the NHL needed somebody immediately because this was right after the NBA lockout. So all the talent that they had secured for that season, boom, vanished, doing back to their NBA assignments. And so they needed somebody right away. So the coordinating producer at the NHL Network had been at ESPN. And so I think he just called his buddies at ESPN and said, hey, I have this guy named Omar. You guys ever heard of him? Or and then I think the ESPN people said, yeah, he's interviewed or auditioned with us a couple of times. He was really good. We just didn't have a spot for him. But I think that's how I essentially got into NHL Network without auditioning for them.
Wow.
Is because two auditions, those good ones together. Even though I didn't get it with ESPN at that time, it got my foot in the door at NHL. And then I did NHL for that 2012 season, and I was the number 4 host. They had two full-timers and a more regular part-time guy, and I was the 4th guy. And they'd fly me out from LA to Toronto. Every time they would need at least 2 shifts covered. In other words, they wouldn't fly me in for just one show, but if they had at least 2 shows that needed to be covered, I would do those. And
wow,
those opportunities opened up because the number 1 host was Catherine Tappan, who you probably know on NBC now. She's some Sunday Night Football recently and become the face of their hockey coverage. Great gal, great lady. Catherine was number 1. Their second guy was David Amber, who also did the pregame and postgame show host of the Toronto Raptors and NBA TV Canada. And then their third guy, I forget his name, but he was the pregame, postgame show host for the Buffalo Sabres hockey team. So between the absences that those guys, I would fill in those opportunities. And so I did that 2012 season when the Kings won their first Stanley Cup. So it's kind of cool to come back here and go to Staples Center and watch them in that playoff run. But That was 2012. As soon as that season ends, the NHL does their lockout. And so here's an interesting thing about how, the business works, whatever. The NHL was on a lockout when the NFL calls and says, hey, they need somebody for these news updates. And so the NFL brings me in, and they bring me in for an interview. They throw me on the air November 1st. I don't even know how much I'm being paid per day. I don't know how long they're going to employ me. I'm on the air on national TV without a contract, not knowing how much I'm being paid. I'm just doing it. And so it eventually works out that they're gonna bring me on. And after the end of November, I didn't find out how much I'm making per day, and then they're gonna keep me on for 8 months. And then they're gonna do. They were guaranteeing me a minimum of 50 shows. So between November 1st through June 30th, that 8-month period, they would guarantee me at least 50 shows.
And you were working at the Apple Store trying to make ends meet.
I was still working at the Apple Store. Wow. And once I got the contract at the end of November, I finally had to put my 2-week notice in because I had to sort of be on call. And with that, even though it was only 8 months, the 50 shows guaranteed that, okay, I can make enough money on this to pay the bills, no matter what. And
because people know, whenever you're the fill-in, you're not making that much money. You're invoicing. You're hoping the checks come in. Hopefully, they get paid within 90 days. All that other stuff. But it's just you're chasing your dream. You're hustling. You're going after it, and you're saying that you're going here. You're auditioning here. Hopefully, it goes somewhere else. And you're like me. You got to have that attitude of, okay, it didn't work out time. We're gonna figure out another time. In that part, did you ever get frustrated and be like, you know what? Maybe it's time I transition somewhere else?
I did think about that, ever so briefly, but I just believed in myself. I just knew that, what I'm doing now, and even more so, I feel like I'm capable of even more.
Yep.
And so all of what I had been doing is I always just thought it. There's no ands, ifs, or buts in my mind on what I could do and where I could go. And so it was just a matter of time, opportunity, the circumstances, and just hanging in there. And I think for me, my wife is, incredibly supportive, and I don't think that could have happened if I didn't marry somebody within the business, because she understood the sort of rigors of it and the ups and downs, and not having that regular paycheck at times,
or the regular hours, or the regular life.
All that. So without having that, because I've always felt like, I want my cake and eat it too, kind of thing. I want a good career, and kids and all that sort of stuff, and so anyway, with her having my back 100%. I felt like that gave me the confidence that I could stick with it no matter what, and just kind of go until I feel like I can't anymore, and I'm still going.
You're doing it. You're doing it. You're doing it, man. It's awesome. Now let's get into a little bit of this NHL Network. You're obviously the first Mexican there. I know Robert Flores has done some stuff lately for them because he's also at MLB Network. And now that they moved to New Jersey, NFL Network, you're the first Mexican there. Still, you're the only one. I know they have MJ. I forget, Acosta. Is that
Acosta?
Latina?
Ruiz, yeah. She married a Ruiz.
Oh, did she? She's awesome. She's great. I remember seeing her in San Diego when I would go cover Charger games. I'm like, that young lady right there is going to be a star, and she's definitely doing that. And then that's it.
Will Selva.
Oh, he's still at NFL Network? Will Selva?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
He does the Good Morning Football show.
Oh, see, I don't. Once again, I said
he's not at 4 a.m., but he's based out of LA. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Will Selva, former ESPN. So there's not many Latinos at the network level. You and I have done panels before, and we've on the side we text about it, like how we can help people out, and it's more of the lack of the pipeline. There aren't many kids who. There's a lot of kids who go and get the degree, but they don't know about the internship that you got to do. This best advice you can give for somebody who's young right now, who's not quite as go getting as you, but you know that they got talent. Best advice you can give.
Yeah, just to believe in yourself. I think that's, for my story, believe in what you can do, what you want to do. But I think you just touched on it, Beto, the internships, because I felt like when I got to San Diego State, even getting my first internship, they didn't allow non-seniors to do internships. So I enrolled at the local junior college, Grossmont College, to get my credit to be allowed to do an internship in like my sophomore or junior year at San Diego State. And I felt like getting that real world exposure kind of prepared me, maybe more than even any class did. And at the very least, it taught me, okay, what I really need to focus on in school, academically, what they're teaching me in these classes, okay, what actually gets used out in the real world. So, but more importantly, it just, taught me from an early age kind of, just how to do the job, the behind the scenes aspect of it. So I'll say, the internships and the real world exposure is what, and it doesn't have to be like, obviously I had that NBC Olympics internship in Athens. It doesn't have to be that. It could just be at your local radio station, but just doing the job, and find ones that you could do a little hands-on. And, I was fortunate enough to have internships. John Hartung, who's, they're now on the Dodgers network. Now he was, my boss at one of my internships in San Diego. And he allowed me to be hands-on and kind of produce his shows, so to speak. And, I'd kind of basically do everything except write. He would write his own stuff, but I would help cut the highlights. In other words, find internships, even if it's, nothing glamorous. It's not a, big TV station, or you just be a small radio station where you're actually doing the work and pressing the buttons and doing all that to get the real world experience and exposure. Because once you get your actual first job, the expectation is that, you hit the ground running and you shine now that you kind of, have that already. You're not trying to fumble your way through your first job.
Now that you're doing what you want to do, and you're not even saying doing what you want to do, because you're like me, where I love what I'm doing right now, but I know I could do more. What would you tell 18-year-old Omar Ruiz?
Oh, that's a
getting
good
deep,
one.
getting deep, yeah. Baby, getting deep.
Yeah, shoot, man, there's that one I would say just be patient. You could kind of sense, obviously the sort of confidence I have. And, I wanted everything right away. I wanted it now. I didn't want to wait for another 3-year contract in Columbus. I wanted to go to LA now. I think I'm ready now. I'm ready now to, host the Olympics in this day. You know what I mean? But you got to have patience. And I've even seen, obviously my growth at NFL Network, that, how I am today, I'm light years better than I was 4 years ago, even more so than I was 8 years ago. And even just within my same job, sort of same role, I've gotten so much better. So I would tell the 18-year-old version of me just to be patient. Like, a lot of things just come with time and maturity and repetition and experience, all of that. That your dreams can come true, they will come true, but just let it breathe. It's you hear a lot. It's not your time. It's not God's time. It's, sometimes you just got to kind of let control, because I think, in this business to succeed, you get so bullheaded to do it. You want to, take the bulls by the horn and not take no for an answer and all this kind of stuff. You have that mentality, that attitude is hard sometimes to justify to that same person. Okay, just be patient. It'll come, all that. So I would say to my 18-year-old self that, preach patience a little more.
There you go. Omar Ruiz. Go and follow him on social media. Omar D. Ruiz. What's the D stand for?
Daniel.
Omar.
Daniel.
Omar
but
Daniel.
This is, for all the homies out there, my birthday is December 11th. And had I been born, I was born like at 11:30 p.m. on December 11th. Had I been born half an hour later, my middle name would have been Omar Guadalupe Ruiz. I would have been OGR. So
OG, oh man, you should have waited. You would have been the OG of NFL Network.
But hey, I'm good with Daniel. I think my Nino's middle name was Guadalupe, and he said he got a lot of grief growing up. So I'm good with Daniel.
You'll be all right. You'll be all right. Omar Ruiz, if you guys want to reach out to him, Omar D. Ruiz. Go follow him on social media, especially if you're a fan of West Coast football teams, Raiders, Arizona, Niners.
Because, I was like Omar.Ruiz at NFL.com is my email. So if there's anybody watching that, wants to reach out or needs advice or anything like that, I'm always open to that. Or my DMs and these social media stuff too. I'm always encouraging that and open to that as well.
Oh, let me type that. Look, I'm telling you, technologies, man, technology. Is that it right there?
That's it right there. Boom.
So there's the email. If you Omar.Ruiz@NFL.com if you want to reach out to him if you have any questions. That's the professional one. And if he doesn't get back to you, well, then follow up with him. No, it's because I'm gonna have a rant for another day because when we do that panel, I'm gonna talk about these kids who reach out to me once and then they don't ever follow up with anything. I'm gonna follow them.
Yeah, we get like hundreds of emails a day, so sometimes I just forget. Especially we do everything on our phone nowadays. Yeah. You only see like 5 emails on that one screen.
Yeah.
So sometimes you do got to follow up and stuff, but yeah, I'm sincere about that for sure.
I don't follow up on emails because all my emails are either Amazon delivery notices or or Starbucks. That's all I get because I tell people just text me. I'm like, here's my number. Text me. It's not that hard, but they don't do it. Omar, appreciate it for your time. Thanks so much for being patient for getting this, and I'm glad, man. Your story's good. I told you that we're gonna do this eventually, and then now we did it. And I love your hustle. You remind me of me because we have the same kind of things. Backgrounds of getting after it, and we're only getting started, man. Like I'm telling you, we're only getting started. We unite, we get better. We're gonna do this because we can go and do all kinds of other stuff. But one thing you never did today is complain, because we know what we're getting ourselves into in this terrible business. So why complain? There's no need for that.
And then it's like your show's called, it's living the dream. Like, there's frustrations, there's headaches, there's stress, there's kind of turmoil and the big deep philosophical reflections and everything, but the bottom line is I get to watch and talk football for a living, and it doesn't get much better than that. And and I have these little kids running around.
Oh, you got are the kids there? They want to get on. The kids want to show up.
Hey, you want to get on?
Hey, have they ever? Oh, they actually made the show the other day, right, for somebody's birthday.
Yeah, they by now most of my coworkers know my daughters and and they love them and adore them, so they're like put them on TV, and so I did something on Myles Garrett, the Browns defensive player. So this is
¿Qué pasó?
This is here. And this is on TV.
What? Make that face. Wait, make that face again. Make that face again. All right, there's one. Where's the other one? 2. Hey, do you know? Is your dad famous?
Yeah.
Yes. Do you watch him on TV?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do they tell me if my reports are good, or if it wasn't? So be honest with me, they'll say, "Oh, that one wasn't very good, Dad."
Wait till they start going with you to work. That's the best. When they start going, and then my daughter Michaela, when I used to take her with me to do Laker stuff, they'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna sit in the makeup room because they have TVs over here and it's not sports. And I'm like, thanks for the support, girls. Appreciate it. They're cute when they're 4 and 5. It's when they get older.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, Omar, appreciate it. I know you're busy with those kids. Thanks so much. We'll definitely do it again, and then I'll deliver those beers pretty soon once I get the gate code for your mansion, and we'll be there.
All right.
Un abrazo, gracias, man. Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.